What's up, everybody? You're back with The Chosen Con, and today we have with us Mr. Nick Blanchette. Go ahead. You want to say hi to the gang?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, man.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm glad that I finally got you in the studio because me and Nick have been having a lot of incredible conversations about what's going on in the world.
Oh, you flatter me.
I'm serious. We go grab a coffee, and then this guy just he caresses me when I get sad. And when I get sad about what's going on in the world, he's like, it'll be okay. So today what I wanted to talk about was basically as millennials, everywhere we look, everyone's saying millennials don't know anything about politics, or they don't really get educated, or whatever it may be.
Or they're apathetic.
Yeah, so what would be the best way for a millennial to really get involved?
Oh, man, I would have to say just start by having these types of conversations with your friends. Yeah. It doesn't have to be, what do you think about Donald Trump? You can just ask your friends, what would you like? What's your perfect country like? What would you like to see the government do? And if we can talk about this stuff more in the youth, we'll politically socialize each other, and we'll start to, learn more from one another.
Which is something that really isn't happening a lot, because what I was finding, especially at university, everyone was stuck in their little groups, and everybody stuck with people that thought just like them, so their narrative never got challenged. So when me and you were talking on the podcast, we really dove into talking to people that even have different perspectives as well.
Yeah, 100%. I one piece of advice that I would give is, even if you disagree with somebody, let's say you're a Trump supporter and you find somebody who doesn't like Trump, or you support Trudeau and then you run into a conservative, sit down with them, talk to them, try and be respectful. And as much as politics can be emotional, try and take a little bit of the emotion out of it. Just try and have a conversation and find common ground.
Yeah, so don't attack the person, right? Which is what most people do. We attack the person.
Yeah, attack the argument. Yeah. And do it in a respectful way.
That's the key, that dialogue.
Yes.
And in the podcast, we also dove deep into just the current state of affairs.
Yep.
And how, global, climate change.
Yeah.
Right? We talked about how it's a world problem.
It is.
It's not an American problem or a Muslim problem or whatever. How do you feel about that?
I feel like we've kind of been talking about over some time here, I feel like it's a massive issue. And it's not something I think that's appropriate to point fingers at people with. You shouldn't say it's your fault for climate change and it's your fault for climate change, because the historical perspective is climate change happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's coming faster than it ever did before, but this is a natural process. It's like the planet's breathing. It's just freezing and thawing. This is how it regulates itself. But if we want to stop the world from flooding and freezing, we better get our ass in gear and try and figure this out. And we can't do it as individual nations. Yeah. We need everybody to come together.
This is very true. It's going to be interesting to see how people start waking up to that, right? A lot of young people are starting to wake up, are starting to have conversations, but what I'm finding is that educate yourself on it, right? You were talking about universities, how you don't really need this piece of paper now to be educated.
That's right.
Right? You got, what were your credentials? Here, I got to hear this again.
Honors in political science and double minor in history and philosophy.
And so how was it once you graduated? What jobs did you get? You must have got the creme of the creme de la creme, or whatever.
So I was an arborist. Yeah. Sounds fancy, but for those of you who don't know, that's someone who basically just cuts down trees for a living. Total manual labor. Great job. Not something I was educated for, and now I paint houses while I'm working on continuing my certifications.
So your degree really didn't. It didn't really
No,
matter.
It didn't. And when I talk about certain issues, let's say Syria, for instance, you talk about Syria. If you want to educate yourself on Syria, just go online and start doing some research. Mm-hmm. There's very few specific classes you can take in university to make you knowledgeable about current events. And if that's the case, you need to find a way to educate yourself. And you might not get a certificate for it, but you'll know more than you did before.
And it's about going to different mediums as well. Don't just go on Huffington Post articles or just something that one of your friends posted online.
Yeah, those of you who watch CNN all day, every day, and think that you're an educated, enlightened person might need a wake-up call.
Yeah, because it's you need to go meet different people as well, get those different perspectives, read some books, but also just like you just said, don't just be on one media outlet. Don't just be fixated on it. right? That's the key, I believe.
That's right.
For us to actually open our minds and get a different perspective. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was just how being empowered, how young people now, I think that the state of politics the state of the world in general is changing. That young people are going to really be the ones that are making the change and making that move. What do you think?
Well, we're in a new era where before, in our parents' generation, media had a monopoly on what you saw and what you heard. And nowadays you can go on YouTube, you can go on social media, you can post your opinions, you can create a following. And that basically means that what you see and what you hear is first of all up to you to choose, but it's become more accessible. Mm-hmm. So if you have an idea as a young person, you can get it out there like this format right here. And this is how young people start to have a voice, where we're not just listening to the news and what's on the radio, we're on the internet communicating, getting our message heard. And people are listening.
They are starting to now. The internet has no borders, which is a beautiful thing as well.
That's true.
Right? You can utilize that tool and connect with someone in China or in Africa or Pakistan or whatever it may be and have these ideas free-flowing. And I think that's what I want to conclude with is open up, right? Utilize your resources, open up, start talking to different types of people and have conversations about this, right? Like me and you, we dove into things that really matter to us, like student debt, not being able to afford housing. We talked about all of these issues on the podcast. Check it out because I'm telling you, it'll really help and open up your mind to more of these conversations, right? With different perspectives because me and you we didn't agree on some things, right? Like
we still don't.
Yeah, but it's like we had an incredible conversation.
You bet.
Right, so thank you again, Nick. I would strongly urge everybody to reach out to him. If you're really, if you enjoy politics or even just like what's going on in the world, talk to Nick, man.
Thanks. You do me a great honor, Abu. I appreciate it.
Right, grab a coffee with this guy because he really helped me open up my mind as well. But you challenged my perspective.
Thanks.
Right, which is a beautiful thing, and I think that's what true friendship is.
I agree.
Right, not just agreeing with everything. It's like, you know what? Wait a minute. There might be a flaw in your reasoning.
Yeah.
So thank you again for tuning in. And I'm sure we'll get Nick back into the studio. We're going to have his brother come on soon and talk about some history. World War I to be exact, I believe. So thank you again. Peace. Are we doing a staring contest? Subscribe. Check out the podcast. Stop looking at my ugly face.